Hey, this is Maxx Payne, and give me back my pro wrestling!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
For those who don't know, now you know, baby. This is Hot Rod Biggs, Jared, Jimmy Street. We're going to take them to the limit one more time, baby, right here on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one more time to the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast, and I am here as always with my brother from the same father and mother, the Plastic Sheik, Jared Street. What is up, Sheik? How you doing?
I'm good, brother. I'm good. And you know what I brought with me? A little charisma.
Oh, yeah, I count on you for that. That is the one and only Territory Wrestling Guru, co-host with the Mo-host, and host of the most recent This Month in Wrestling History with Quinton Quarisma. Quinton, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing good. How y'all guys doing?
Oh, man, doing good.
Doing good.
Speaking of your show, brother, that was our last episode, and by our numbers and analytics and reports back, everybody's really enjoying it. I know I did. I know Sheik did. I hope you had a good time with it, man. But what do you think about episode 4?
I enjoy doing it, and I made one big mistake. I thought I said 85 instead of 86 on the Magnum car wreck. I don't know why I said 85. Yeah. But besides that, I liked it, enjoyed it, and I want to thank everybody for it's listening to it. I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. We had a blast with that. Obviously, this week we have an incredible show. If you followed us on @GMBMPW or seen any of our postings, we have the one and only Maxx Payne, aka Man Mountain Rock. Daryl Peterson is here today. And guys, I'll say this. This is one, this one is not a Captain's Corner episode. This one is a hard fought one. We scheduled it. Unfortunately, something happened, didn't get to do it. Then we had another date scheduled, then that moved, and then we got it to the date that it happened. Good news is it happened, and we've got him today. Y'all can't wait to talk to him today. What do y'all think about Maxx Payne, guys?
He's been a little bit everywhere, done a lot of things, man. Accomplished in music and in the ring, and it should be a great conversation.
Yeah,
I remember him mostly from his Memphis run.
Yeah.
I mean, in 88, and he had a really good run in 88. And then I remember a little bit of his WCW and his WWF time, but mostly his Memphis run is what I mostly know him for.
And be honest, Q, you want to talk to him about the IWA too.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we're excited about a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm a musician. Obviously, there's so much to talk with Max about. So y'all just stick around for that. Before we get to him, though, I want to talk about, what we've been talking about this entire time here. Captain's Corner, Portland Wrestling Expo 2, Saturday, February 21st, Holiday Inn, Portland Airport, 8439 Northeast Columbia Court, Portland, Oregon. Guys, you got to be there or be square. It's going to be a blast. It's going to have Kim Patera, the grappler, Lynn Denton. I mean, guys, it's Joey Jackson. I mean, it's Dave Sullivan. I know there's many more. They're doing a Hall of Fame where they're putting Playboy Buddy Rose in, and they're putting Don Cost, the legendary announcer, up there in. I'm sure there'll be more announced. But anyway, it's going to be a cool thing. Y'all better be there or be square. To continue on with more news, obviously, I hope y'all are enjoying it, but we are doing our NWA Solder Days through February 7th of 2026. We are running a 19-episode run of my little bitty run in the NWA Saw territory. And man, I tell you what, it was a lot of fun out there in the sawmill. Quinton, you worked in the sawmill some, right?
I worked, actually, my last real match was in the sawmill in April of 2010.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So obviously the sawmill means a lot to all of us, and we, all like TJ and Kroll and all that. So anyway, y'all check that out. I hope y'all enjoy that. You never know, if you enjoy this, maybe that'll open the door to some other future things in the future. So just hang tight with us on that. Hope you enjoy them. Checking out Josephus, Team IOU, Plunky and Drew, King Shane Williams, Hammerjack, Chris Michaels, Kevin Weatherby, 1,000 different people that make it worth it to watch, and you can just fast forward through my part. But anyway, I hope y'all enjoy that.
Now we got to check out. Now everybody's got to check out your part. They got to see. They got to see the man in action. You sell yourself short, but people are going to want to see these to see your contribution to the business, and like it or love it, it's the best thing going on solder days.
I need to hire you as my agent, Sheik. I appreciate that. No, man, I appreciate you saying that, but I'm not trying to put this in any other light. I just talk about it all the time, and I would
exactly
be able to see it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the one thing I want to get to, and obviously NWA Solder Days is part of that, but I want to get to our guest of the show today, Maxx Payne. Guys, are y'all ready for that?
I'm ready for it.
Let's do it.
All right, we'll be right back with the one and only Maxx Payne on Gimme Back My Pro Wrestling after these messages.
CHW is continuing the legacy of historic professional wrestling in Tennessee with monthly events at the Armory in Ashland City. CHW owner Mike Green has made it his mission to present the best pro wrestling shows in the Nashville area, and he has been delivering the goods. CHW Wrestling combines all the elements that Tennessee wrestling fans have come to expect. Action, suspense, athleticism, reality, stories, surprises, and excitement, all delivered by the finest professional wrestlers this state has to offer. Follow CHW Pro Wrestling on Facebook for the latest news, announcements, and show dates. And subscribe to Championship Productions on YouTube to see past events like the Ashland City Rumble and the Valentine's Massacre. Fun for the whole family with delicious and affordable concessions on site. Witness the action and excitement of CHW in Ashland City at the Armory. Family Wars, Love and Hate, Championship Gold. A CHW event is everything you're looking for in a night of live entertainment.
All right, we are back with one more awesome episode of the Gimme Back My Pro Wrestling, and Sheik and Quinton, we have got an excellent one today. Guys, everybody knows who listens, knows I'm a musician, and also I love pro wrestling. So when you get those two together, there's nobody better to bring in the scene is Maxx Payne, aka Man Mountain Rock. Max, welcome to the show, my friend.
Oh, it's nothing but my privilege. And thank God somebody gave me back my pro wrestling.
Thank
There you go.
Daggone right, brother. So again, man, thank you for being on. We start every show with the Plastic Sheik's favorite question. Sheik, take it away.
All right, Max. So this is going to let the listener know your influences and maybe just tell us all a little bit about you as far as your influences in wrestling. If you had like a Mount Rushmore, 4 or 5 names in the wrestling business, people you like to work with that inspired you, whatever. If you had 4 or 5 names, what would that list look like?
Mine's probably a little more obscure than the average person because I broke in so differently. I broke in. Red Bastien trained me. So Red Bastien's on my Mount Rushmore because he's the guy that broke me into the business, and Red was just one of those incredibly amazing individuals. And I to this day, I feel completely honored that I knew him and that I was trained for the business by him.
Yeah.
The next would probably be, well, I'm going to have to say, and this is going to be controversial, but I'm going to have to put him up there in the top 5, is Chris Benoit, because I lived with him. He was my first roommate. He was my first partner in the New Japan Pro Wrestling Dojo when I broke in, and he and I were incredibly good friends. And then the other side of this is probably the most influential territory I worked in. We talked just briefly for a second about, and we'll talk more about it, the CWA and Lawler.
Yeah.
So Lawler's got to be in there. But the other CWA I worked in, which was the Catch Wrestling Alliance in Germany under Otto Wanz, and the guys that really, really gave me just my background and taught me and gave me so much were the guys from the CWA Germany, which would have been Dave Finley, Dave Taylor, Tony St. Clair, the colonel there. We had a colonel that was there, and just that territory. And then last but certainly not least, Darren Matthews would have been included in that. Lord Steven Regal. But more importantly, the American who really loved me, believed in me, and is still a very, very close friend to this day is Rip Rogers.
The Hustler.
Yeah, he's
great.
and he and I, he really took me under his wing, and because I loved him and believed in him, and I've said this over and over again. He's forgotten more about the wrestling business than I know.
Yeah.
And, I really love and respect guys like that because it falls back to the way the old territories used to be. And a lot of what I'm saying, they used to have a terminology in the wrestling businesses, when you'd first break in and an old timer would recognize your talent and would take you under his wing, they'd say you were married to the guy. And a lot of those guys I would consider I was married to because they really took me under their wing, loved me, and looked after me. And really, I wouldn't even know where to start to talk about the level of influence they had on me being and understanding the wrestling business. And some people might laugh at that and say, well, they failed miserably because you still don't know a damn thing about the wrestling business.
Come on, man.
No, man, don't do it.
Hey, I'm the first guy to laugh at myself, so that way anybody else does it, it doesn't hurt my feelings.
Fair enough. I like that idea. Yeah.
Great list. I mean, obscurity is fine. That's what the question's all about. I think some people get worried sometime with that question that they've got to give the vanilla answer, so to say, and just say, oh, well, here's the 4 best, most influential or whatever in pro wrestling. But to give it from the heart of who influenced you, that's why I asked that. That's why I break that down at the first and say, hey, who influenced you? Who did you like working with? And
the truth of the matter is, Stowe, having said that, then I also, despite my feelings about Terry, is that Hogan had because I built the cage at WrestleMania 2. Oh. So I was standing on the floor at WrestleMania 2 in the sports arena in Los Angeles, and to feel I was carrying jackets and building the ring, building the cage. That's how Red started me, was the right way. He started by, I'd carry the jackets back, I'd build the ring. And like in that instance, we built the cage, which is a great story in and of itself. But so Hogan and standing on the floor at the sports arena when he got that big pop at WrestleMania 2, and to feel that moment, that only concreted the deal. And that was the moment I realized that I had to do it. But Terry didn't have, other than me, I mean, I was a mark too, right? So,
sure.
I was standing on the floor, my jaw dropped to the ground and, crapping my pants because I'd never seen anything like that before or bore witness to it.
Yeah.
So that was so I certainly have to give credit where credit's due that way.
Sure. Of course.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to take it to a different direction real quick because we are Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling but I want to talk about this real quick. Obviously, I've said this many times. I'm a musician, bass player. So let's talk about that a little bit. When did guitar come in the picture for you?
I think I somehow, it's funny because I've thought about this on numerous occasions. So I started playing the guitar when I was 10 years old. And
okay.
But I took guitar lessons, from a teacher that wanted to teach me the Mel Bay.
Right.
I don't know if you know who Mel Bay is.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
So, the idea of playing Little Brown Jug and Reuben, to learn how to play the guitar note by note, it didn't fit me. And so my mother and father sent me to this guy that, they really wanted me to learn the fundamentals of reading music. And you know what the problem was for me is I am like so severely dyslexic that I remember like my first piano lesson when I was 5 years old, but reading music had this, it had the same kind of impact on me. For some reason, my brain the older I've gotten, it's become even more and more difficult. So I always wanted to play the guitar, but I wanted to play it, I wanted to learn how to play it by learning Alice Cooper and Kiss and David Bowie and Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
This guy's trying to teach me the Mel Bay method. And so, I had enough under my belt that I knew most of the fundamentals, but it wasn't until I read an article in Guitar Player magazine, probably around 1980, 81, by Eddie Van Halen, who had written an article about the power of the whole article was about 145.
Yeah.
And,
okay. Right.
And 145, to anybody who doesn't know what that is every rock and roll song you've ever heard is based on the blues, the minor pentatonic scale, and 145.
Right.
And it's, the 12-bar turnaround.
Yeah.
And Eddie, the whole article was, if you're going to learn to play, don't do anything else first. He even though he was a classically trained musician and, knew how to read music, knew how to do all of that, he still based his ideology on playing by ear. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, my mother was a brilliant musician, and she couldn't read a note either. I think she had dyslexia too, but she never told me that. I'm just going to guess it. Yeah. But she couldn't read music either. She could read it, but she wasn't good at it. But by the same token, this is a classic example of the influence of, because this is what, this is certainly in the road of the question that you just asked me, is my mother, we went to see the movie The Sting.
Yeah.
And we walked in the house after seeing that movie, and she sat down and played The Entertainer.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And she didn't miss a note.
Wow.
So she could play anything by ear. She could listen to any song that she wanted to and sit down and play it. And so after I read the article by Eddie, I had a friend who was a drummer. He's actually still a drummer. He's in a Led Zeppelin tribute band called No Quarter they're out of the West Coast, out of Washington.
I've heard of them. Yeah.
So he's the drummer. So that tells you the influence of John Bonham, in my opinion, truly the greatest rock drummer of all time.
Oh yeah.
And one day he came to college with me, long convoluted story. And I kept telling him I was going to learn how to play the guitar. And one day he literally stood up in our living room. We were getting ready to go to the national championship. And I was talking about, I'm going to learn how to play one day. And he stood up in the living room and he said, you know what? Hell with you, Max. Stop telling that story until you actually decide you're going to do something about it. And I went the next day. I had probably, even back then, I had this truck that I'd built with the money I'd made in a movie I was in when I was a kid called Takedown. And I took that money and I built this 1959 Ford short bed step side pickup with a big block Chrysler, and it had a 440 in it.
Ooh.
I built this truck, had a badass stereo. Everybody knew me because of my truck. And I had this badass truck and this incredible car stereo in it. And after he said that to me, I went the next day and I traded my car stereo in for a cheap, shitty copy of a Fender Stratocaster and a $100 little guitar amplifier. And I started. And when I went to Iowa State University, I worked in a television station, and one of the PAs there, his name was Carol Altman. And we started talking about the guitar one day, and he said, why don't you, and I was telling him about this article I'd read by Eddie, and he said, well, I can teach you that. And we sat down in the television studio. We brought our amplifiers to the TV studio. And my parents had just bought me a Gibson. It was the cheapest version of a Les Paul they made at the time. It's called the Paul, and it's actually hanging on the wall right here next to me right now as we speak.
That's awesome.
My parents bought me this guitar, and I bought a Carvin 100-watt amp head, put 2 Black Widow speakers, and built my own speaker cabinet for it. And we went to this television studio called WOI Television Studios in Ames, Iowa. And I'll never forget the first time he showed me how to play a 12-bar turnaround. And, from that moment forward, I was hooked. And I played until I sort of hit the wall and this is the absolute change moment in my life, when I heard Metallica's Black Album.
Oh yeah.
And I heard that album, and that's when it was my first season in Germany. I told everybody, when I come back next year, I'm going to be able to play this Metallica album. And I went home, and for 5 months, I just played that album. I taught myself how to read tablature, which was great because tablature is not like reading music. It's basically all you're reading is fingering position on the guitar.
Yeah.
So I taught myself how to play most of that album. And when I went back the next year, halfway through the season, I convinced them into letting me do this. And I had a couple of real big fans. Like I said, I said before about the German guys who were behind me. Dave Finley was absolutely the most profound of those guys, and he loved my gimmick and wanted me to bring. He's the one who he flushed me out. Flushing is probably better, because he put me in the middle of a stage, and I'd never played in front of a crowd at an Oktoberfest in some little town in Germany. And I stood up and played Give Me 3 Steps by Leonard Skinner.
Yes.
Tore the house down. And from that moment forward, he supported me, and I started working my ass off to build the Maxx Payne gimmick. And so that's as close to the whole story in a nutshell as how I was sitting in Japan with on one of the last tours I went to Japan with Tom Pritchard. We were sitting in the lobby of this hotel, and I told him, I said, I told him the name Maxx Payne. I said, I'm going to be the first guitar playing wrestler. And I told Tom that at that moment. And I talked to Tom, I don't know, probably a year ago, and brought that up. And he and I chuckled about that for a second. And I said, this is what I want to do with my gimmick. And needless to say, I didn't have very much support. It's funny, the wrestling business is not too friendly with wrestlers who want to be musicians too.
I believe it.
I was no different, but yeah, I knew it's what I wanted to do, and I was relentless. And like I said, I'm so glad I did. So there you go.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
All right, we're going to backtrack a little bit. You talk about Red Bastien was your trainer. How did you meet Red Bastien?
So I dropped out of high school when I was 16 years old. So I was in this movie. So forgive me. How the hell do you get there to Red Bastien telling you about a movie I was in when I was 16? So when I was 16, I was in this movie called Takedown. It was an amateur wrestling movie, and it completely and utterly changed my life. It absolutely defined who I am today. There's no way around it. It had such a profound impact on me. And so because of this movie and the impact it had on me, I ended up dropping out of school. In the year that I filmed Takedown, I dropped out of high school. I got married and had a child all in the same year.
Oh,
wow.
So, yeah, they started filming Takedown in January of 1978. And on December 21st of 1978, my first son, Dustin, was born. And so I realized after working construction and my head down and my ass in the air for, the first couple of years of my marriage, I was still technically would have been in high school. And I decided I was going to go get my GED and go back to school. And Oklahoma State had contacted me even as a junior in high school about coming to Oklahoma State and wrestling for the Cowboys because of my coach in high school. So I ended up contacting that coach. He got me a gig at this junior college in North Idaho. I went to school in North Idaho. Because of my success there, I ended up going to school at Iowa State University, graduated from college with a degree in television and film. And I looked up the director of photography from Takedown when I graduated from school. And he said, Max, if you really want to pursue a career in television and film, you don't have a choice. And it's funny, I knew what he was going to say. He said, you got to move to LA. You got to go seek fame and fortune in LA. There's no way around it. I'll give you a couple of phone numbers of people who live down there that might give you a job. But the bottom line is you've got to go to LA and find your way there. And so in the fall of 1985, which would have been the year I graduated from college in May of 85. And by August of 85, I was in Los Angeles. So I went to LA looking for a job and couldn't find anything and didn't know how to find a job in television and film. And I'd been hustling my ass off trying to get a job. And I'd gone to, what seemed like 1,000 dead end interviews. And I was living with my cousin and her son. And I was going to sleep in this morning because I didn't, I'd worked so hard. I was going to give myself the day off and I was going to go to the beach and go swim and see if Jason wanted to do that. Well, at 5 o'clock in the morning, there was a brand new radio station that had just come to life in Los Angeles at the time called KNAC. And it was like the big hard rock heavy metal station that had just come to fruition in LA. And I'm laying there and he's got KNAC cranked up and I'm, typically got my head covered with a pillow trying to sleep in. Realize that's not going to happen. He comes flying in the room and he goes, Max, you're not going to believe this. I just won tickets to a movie premiere at Man's Chinese Theater. And I said, shut up. He said, no. And he said, yeah, it's Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And I said, no. And he said, yeah. So I said, well, man, let's go. So I had a 1969 Chevy Impala with a 350 stock from the factory, 375 horses, Fuelie 202 heads, a quadrajet carburetor on it, and it ran like a son of a gun, but it looked like shit, four-door. And I got up, we went to Sill Beach that morning and body surfed and boogie boarded. and we went to this movie premiere in LA. And while we're standing there, there was this security guard standing in front of me, and I was a foot taller than him. And he hadn't really like turned around to look at me yet. And I said to my cousin, I said, God, if that dude can get a security guard job, I can get one. The guy turned around and was like staring into my sternum. And he looked up at me and he goes, yeah, you'd have a job in 5 minutes. And he whipped out a card and he said, give these guys a call. They'll give you a job. So it was like this incredible blessing. I immediately called them. The next day, they gave me a job on the spot. And the third job they gave me was working at a boxing match at the Palladium on Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. And the Palladium's still there. It's an age-old venue that's been around for decades and decades. And it's just a big ballroom where, you could it probably hold a couple of thousand people, and perfect for this match. And the boxing match was Tate, Tillman, and Gonzalez. And so they brought me in as a security guard, and they put me on the floor right next to the boxing ring this morning. And while I'm standing there, this TV guy starts backing up towards me, and he looks like he's going to trip. And because I'd already worked in television for 3 years at WOI in Ames. That's one of the things when my coach recruited me to Iowa State, was one of the big sales pitches was, look, I'll get you a job working in this television station from the moment you get here, which he did. And so I worked in commercial television for 3 years before I moved to Los Angeles. So this guy's backing up towards me. And what you do when somebody's doing that, when a handheld guy was doing that, is I reached down and I put my hand on his back so that he wouldn't fall. And he felt me guide him back to where he was going. When the guy turns around, I actually, God, to this day, it just blows my mind. I actually knew the guy. He had just come to Iowa State. They used to do this thing on Wide World of Sports where they showed the national championships. That's the only time you ever saw amateur wrestling on television. Was the Wide World of Sports showed, probably 5 minutes on one Saturday at the end of March, showed highlights from the NCAA finals. And they would go around and they would send an independent photographer around to interview people to insert clips into the show, right? Mm-hmm. And I happened to be one of the guys he interviewed. So I knew that dude. So I'm standing there. He goes, oh my God, it's you. And I said, yeah. And he goes, here's my card. Give me a call. I'll give you a job. I know why you're in Los Angeles. And I said, oh my God. Okay. So it gave me my first television job. So I'm standing there, and the guy who had assigned me my job at ringside come up to me and he goes, I have somebody that wants to meet you. And I said, okay. So he takes me and he walks me over to this dude, and the guy shakes my hand and he said, hi, my name is Dave Knutson. He said, I'm from Lehi, Utah, which is literally 5 miles from my hometown. And he says, I know who you are, Daryl Peterson, and I have followed your amateur wrestling career and your movie career since you were, a young lad at Pleasant Grove High School. And he said, I'm such a huge fan. And he said, have you ever thought about being a professional wrestler? And I said, well, yeah, of course. And he goes, well, I have somebody I want you to meet. And at the Palladium, there was this underground back bar that was away from all of the lights. And I swear to God, it was like that area where in Goodfellas, where all of the made guys were sitting, drinking and smoking, and had their Goombas with them. And he walks me over and introduces me to Red Bastien. And then in that same, at the end of that thing, the last part of that story is they put me at the back door, and Farrah Fawcett runs right into me at the back door. So I got a job in television. I got my job in wrestling, and I had Farrah Fawcett's face buried in my chest.
Too bad it
Might have
wasn't
been
the reverse.
the reverse.
Just
You know what's funny about that, too? Here's what's funny about that. I told that story enough that I actually started investigating to see, just to find the boxing match, right? And see if I could find evidence of it in the newspaper. Well, the LA Times had written an article about that day. And not only did they write an article about that day, they brought up that Farrah Fawcett and Ryan O'Neal were there. So it even confirms that Farrah Fawcett was there to confirm that I'm telling the truth about the story.
That's awesome.
You can actually look that up. It was at the end of, it might have been, it had to have been the end of 1985. So yeah, that's how and then from that moment forward, Red loved me and brought me in, trained me. I actually trained me for free. That's how much he believed in me.
Wow.
Yeah, and put me through the business and got me my first gig, which changed my life forever in Japan with Antonio Inoki.
Yeah.
So Bastien's the one that sent you to New Japan then?
Yes.
Okay. So,
yeah, Red's the guy that got me the connection at that time was with this the liaison. Her name was oh my gosh, it was right on the tip of my tongue and now I've forgotten it. Anyway, she was the connection with New Japan, and I met her, and she came and watched me wrestle, and the next day Red called me and said, "You're going to Japan in August, big boy."
Wow. So who was some of the other guys training in the dojo with you at the time?
Oh my God. So when I was there and just getting ready to leave was Justin Liger. He was the dojo boss still at the time. Muto was in the States working in Tennessee, and I think he was working for Bill Watts in Mid-South.
Okay.
And so all the guys in the dojo at the time, Hashimoto, Fujinami, Akira Nogami, Takayuki Izuka, like I said, Frankie, Yamato is his Japanese name. And then the wrestlers that were big at that moment was Fujinami, Kamuta, Maeda, Inoki. Fujiwara was this incredible old shooter who had a profound impact on me. Taught me submission wrestling, basically. Taught me the Karl Gotch submission wrestling world, and God, I love him for that. It was so amazing to learn that and be a part of that. And the list goes. Takada was another guy's name, and at the time, New Japan had just brought on a felling. And what's amazing about this was the beginning of. It really was the very beginning of the UFC, and the UWF was the first organization. So they brought in this organization that was headed by Maeda, and Maeda, they were calling it. They actually called it the Shoot Wrestling Organization. So they were bringing in. They brought in this guy named, I think his name was Rick Nelson, to be honest with you. And then they brought in, oh gosh.
Was he blonde? Was Rick blonde?
No, he was a brunette.
Okay.
He's a dark-headed guy.
Yeah.
They also brought in Horace Gracie.
Oh.
Yeah, so they were trying, but the funny part is it was still a work,
Right.
They were treating it as though it was a shoot, but it wasn't a shoot. It was still a work, but they just beat the shit out of each other, and then at the end, one guy would go over.
I think one of our friends, George Weingroff, did some of that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I know that name.
I figured you did. Yeah,
I know George's name.
Yeah.
And so they brought in. They really started. That was really the first time that the mentality of shoot wrestling, and I mean, look how close it is to UFC. It was the UWF.
Yeah.
And it was called the Ultimate Wrestling Federation. That's what their moniker was. And so their whole deal was they were going to do these shoot wrestling matches, and they kicked the shit out of each other. I mean, they really did. The fighting was a shoot. The finish was the only part of it that was fixed.
Yeah.
But the rest of the match, that was part of the deal. If they paid you that kind of money, they wanted you to be bloody when, your eyes swollen shut and your lips bleeding and everything before you left. And everybody that came gave them that. So, and what's amazing about this, why I'm so lucky, is that for all of this that I'm telling you and all of the great matches I got to bear witness to, Bruiser Brody and Inoki fighting all the way through, the Buddha or the sumo wrestling hall in Osaka, Japan, and just completely just tearing the hall to bits. And I got to Chris and I got to lean. We literally got to lean at ringside for all of this. And if you ever see any of the pictures from me when I was in Japan, usually I'm leaning, I'm kneeling on the apron or on the floor with my chin on the apron of the ring, watching the matches.
Yeah, that's the best view.
Yeah, it was amazing. Oh my God, so amazing. And I have lots of great stories about that too.
So Max, when was your like official first match? Who was it against, and what name did you go under?
I went by Daryl Peterson, and they used my real name. They got pissed off at me for trying to create my own imagery with Maxx Payne, and they hated the fact, which is part of the reason I lost favor with them, is because I already had an idea for a character, and that's not the way they worked. They wanted me to do their gimmick and then, come to the States and do it another way. And I just didn't realize that's what was going on. That's because I had already developed this Maxx Payne character in my mind, but I wrestled against Barbarian, American Barbarian, my first match, biggest match was, and it wasn't actually the very first match I wrestled in a bunch of kind of preliminary things, but in front of 22,000 in the Sumo Palace in Japan. And oh my God, it's so embarrassing to watch to this day. It's like, oh my God, I don't care who you are, whenever you get to see yourself do something for the first time, no matter how good you are. And I wasn't good, but you know what? The crowd was into it, and we had a good time. And Barbarian and I were great friends. It's so funny because I even wrote it down on my itinerary that he was going to be my first match in the Sumo Palace. And he was on that tour. And so we talked all the way through about what we were going to do and how we were going to do it and everything else. And I wrote his name down. He told me his name was Joe. And so I called him Joe until 2 years ago when I saw him at a convention in Albany, New York. And somebody said, "Why do you call him Joe?" And I said, "Well, that's his name." And they go, "No, it's not." And I go, "Well, he told me that." And he looked at me, he goes, "No, brother, that's just what you've always called me." I went, "Oh my God. And you've never corrected me?" He goes, I just never felt like I wanted to, brother. You were a good friend, so I was okay with you calling me Joe. I knew when you said Joe who you were talking to. So, oh my God. So it was with Joe in the Sumo Palace, 22,000.
Oh man, that's awesome. Talk to us about some of your early stuff with Chono over there.
Chono, oh, that's right. I forgot Chono. Did I say Chono's name?
No, that's what I was just saying. I'm just talk to us about some of your early
Chono was actually the next dojo boss. So the way the dojo works is that, like, Muto was in the United States, Yamato was leaving, going to, I think, Mexico or Canada, and Chono was then the dojo boss while I was there. So
Got it.
Chono was, I knew there was somebody I was missing. It was Chono. Chono was dojo boss while I was there. And then after I left, I believe Hashimoto was next. And then he left. And then Funaki. And then he left. And then Nogami. And then he left. So that's just the way it works. Is, you know, those guys were, I ended up wrestling with Chono a few times as well.
Yeah.
I worked with almost all of the Japanese young boys and, you know, all the other guys too, Goto, Chono, Muto. I ended up, obviously, I worked with all of them because that's the way it was. But the funny part about it was I worked as a Japanese guy. So because I was living and traveling with the Japanese and the Americans were the heels and they traveled in another bus, a bus that they'd custom made for Andre the Giant, who actually ended up never getting to use that bus. Had a seat custom built for Andre, which everybody fought for all the time because it was massive and comfortable, and it sat right in the middle of the bus, and it was just this most incredible, comfortable seat. So yeah, I ended up getting to wrestle with all of them. I ended up getting to wrestle with Fujiwara, all the guys from the UWF, and obviously all the guys in the dojo. So yeah, Chono, I love Chono, man. He was an amazing cat.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, so you got any memories of teaming with Benoit over there?
You know, one of my favorite memories is we were the Japanese had set aside a bunch of money for the young boys to go to the island of Saipan for a vacation. And it was one of the only things they didn't take us on. And usually they took us wherever we went to, you know, on the Japanese side, they took us with them. And in this case, they, you know, Sakaguchi came to us and said, you know, I'm sorry you can't go with us because the young boys put in money, you know, for a year so that we could go to, you know, every year they had a vacation that they paid for and they went to Saipan, and they decided not to take Chris and I to Saipan. And so on this particular moment, they left us in the dojo. And the first night we were in the dojo, this young, oh my God. And it's so funny because this wrestler was, I mean, this kid literally, I'm just going to say he was a zit-faced 16-year-old kid, you know, and they left him at the dojo. And this was actually the night before they were getting ready to leave. Okay, they were still there, and there was this guy named Sano, and I'm not sure how his connection came to be, but he was friends with Funaki, and he would come and work out with Funaki. And on the night before they left for Saipan, Funaki and Saito were training this young zit-faced kid. And his name was Asai, Asai. And he was really, really a nice young boy. He just, you could, you know, the Japanese young boys, they had to be very humble because they did all of the grunt shit. You know, they washed all the dishes. They served the wrestlers their food. They washed their, you know, anybody said, hey, go wash my clothes, they would go do that. That's how you broke in the business if you were a Japanese young boy. They didn't do that to us, to Chris and I, but the Japanese, so we got to witness what they did to the Japanese young boys. And this Asai was there. And during the day, we were in the gym working out. Black Cat was our leader, and we'd done a team workout, a dojo workout with everybody. And this guy named Korneko, or Black Cat, was an amazing, amazing man. He was half Chinese and half Japanese, and he was half Chinese, half Mexican, but he was married to a Japanese woman, and he spoke 5 languages fluently. He spoke Japanese because he was married to a Japanese woman. And he was the guy who was like the coach, you know, that trained everybody in the dojo, taught everybody how to be a wrestler, basically, and taught him how to take bumps, how to hit the ropes, all of those kinds of things. So we got done working out, and this young boy Asai was there, and this guy started doing some of the stuff he was doing, and he could walk on the ropes. He could literally walk on the top rope from turn post to turn post, and without anybody helping him.
Whoa.
Yeah, he was like a trapeze artist, and he would jump off the corner, and he would do these flips and stuff, and we were just amazed. And man, Chris and I were just like going, wow, check this out. And this kid was just amazing. And so we had gone upstairs to eat dinner, and we heard him working out and taking bumps in the ring. Like you could, when there was a wrestling match going on in the ring, our window for that we slept in the dojo was literally right outside where the ring was. And so you could hear, it was loud as hell, So Chris and I kind of looked at each other and thought, wow, I wonder what's going on. Let's go check it out. So we went down there, and we walk in, and Funaki and this Sano are beating the living bejesus out of Asai. And I mean, they're shooting on this kid. And they have literally got his ankle on a turnbuckle, and Funaki's got it trapped. And I swear to God, we walked in right at the moment Sano was going to jump off the top rope and break his ankle. He was, he literally was about to break this kid's ankle. And I watched, and I said, stop. And I stopped him, and Sano jumped down. I go, what are you guys doing? I turned into this American heel. And I said, he's half your size. He's 16 years old. What the hell are you guys doing to this kid? He doesn't deserve this. You're going to stop him from ever having a career by breaking his ankle and treating him like this? You guys are out of your mind. I said, leave him alone. I said, you touch him. I looked at Funaki. I walked over and I said, you hurt this kid. I swear to God, I will break you in half, Funaki. And Chris was there with me. Chris was standing behind me, not to say that he was being a pussy. He was just there with me because he felt the same way.
Yeah.
And they were literally trying, because they were so jealous of what he could do in the ring. They were going to break his freaking ankles and put him out of the wrestling business.
Jeez.
And we stopped them. They left the next day, and we became incredible friends with this young boy. And we teased him. We played games. We had just this. When I say we played games, we ribbed him and teased him, and he was 16, but we were playing practical fun, just silly stuff, spraying water on him and stuff like that, and nothing to really hurt him. And finally, Yamamoto, who was the guy who was the office boss, came and got him like the day before they came back from Saipan. And we said goodbye, and we all cried, man, because I knew I would never see him again. And he said, yeah, Yamamoto, he didn't speak very good English at all, but enough that we could understand each other. And they sent him to Mexico. And you know him as Ultimo Dragon.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it was a Sai. And Yasuhiro Asai, and I saw him for the first time in 30 years at a signing convention in Albany, New York, and I didn't know who he was, and because he wears his mask everywhere, like Jesh and Liger does.
Yeah,
they're so true and faithful to their gimmick. He had his mask on. And Sonny Ono came and got me, Sonny came to me and started talking to me, and Asai hadn't told Sonny who he was. And so Sonny goes, I go, who's that guy over there? And he goes, oh, it's Ultimo Dragon. And Sonny says, you should probably know him. Yamamoto broke him in the business, from New Japan Dojo. And I said, oh, well, I'd like to meet him anyway. So I walk over there and I shake his hands. and he starts to talk to Sonny in Japanese. And Sonny looks at me so weird. He goes, he's on about something about you saving his life. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he said something again, and he said, Asai. And I said, Asai, that's you? And he goes, and I don't know if he cried. I certainly did.
Yeah.
I started to cry, and we hugged, and I went, oh my God. And he told Sonny, he said, Max saved my life. And had he not stopped Funaki and Sano that day, they were about to break my ankles, and he saved my life. And told Sonny the same story that I just told you guys. And so that's probably one of my favorite stories with Chris. The day we saved the dragon.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
So cool.
Yeah.
So around this time in the dojo in New Japan, you worked Bam Bam Bigelow. You got any memories of working him in Japan?
So I didn't. I don't think I ever got to work with Bam in Japan. Actually, a match with him. I would have loved to, but Bam was as green as I was.
Yeah.
Larry Sharp had just broke him in, and I was jealous of Bam because they brought him in, and I'm sure he was making $20,000 a week, and I was making $1,500, at the time, but at the time that was still real decent money, and I was living in Japan. Looking back in retrospect, I would have done it I would have paid them, to do it. But Bam came in, and we ended up being really, 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 really good friends. And in fact, Bam Bam, in between my Japan stint and going to Europe, I started my own little territory in Utah called the WWA, Western Wrestling Alliance. And we had one show in my hometown in Pleasant Grove, Utah. And we put 1,000 people in the rodeo grounds. And Bam Bam, God bless his soul and God rest his soul, he came out, and he and I main evented that match. And Bam and I ended up being really, really great friends. And now, in retrospect, which we're going to talk about down the road today, I will tell you the follow up to that is he's in the thing that should not be. He's in the movie that I shot with the WWF on my last tour, on the Full Metal tour, on the last tour in the WWF. And I'm so ecstatic he's in that. And it looks like we'll talk about that down the road still. But Bam and I ended up being just amazing friends. And I consider him to be somebody I thought the world of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So around this time too, you worked Tatsumi Fujinami. He's the legend out there. How was that?
So one of my favorite stories about Fujinami is we were on this tour, and when we started this tour, Sakaguchi came to us and he said, this tour is going to be difficult. He said, it's going to be bullshit. And all the Japanese young boys started warning us about this tour. And it was one of those tours where they called it the farm tour, where all the towns we went to were these little farm communities that if they weren't ran by farmers, they were ran by the Yakuza. So it was either farmers or mafia that we were dealing with. And the houses were the drizzling shits, but the shows were all paid for because these farmers, this is how we did a lot with the Yakuza and with farmers. They would pay for the show, and that way it didn't matter who showed up because everybody got paid, right?
Yeah.
Nobody cared because the Yakuza, if it was the Yakuza, they would sell the tickets. They'd make a guy a deal he couldn't refuse. And if it was the farmers, it was, they just spent the money to have these shows come through town so they could give to all of the local people in the town. And if you wanted to go to the wrestling matches, you could. So needless to say, the houses were the shits. They probably averaged 100, 200 people a night. And so in the middle of this tour, they rented this hotel and they had this big spread one night. I don't know if you know what shabu shabu is, but it is this Japanese delicacy where they take Kobe, or I guess it's called Wagyu steak now. They take Wagyu beef, or in this case, they were still calling it this beef, and they slice it really thin, and then you wave it in boiling water, spicy boiling water. You wrap it around rice, and they had mounds of these steaks.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I'm talking literally probably, 50 pounds of this meat, and probably, I don't know, 10 gallons of sake, and they started getting drunk. And when I'm telling you they started getting drunk, it's funny because when the Japanese go through, they have these rituals that they go through where they challenge each other as they drink, right? Yeah, so they just, oh my God, and this meat, if you've never tasted a Wagyu or a Kobe
Like butter.
steak,
It's like butter.
it's amazing. It literally, it's like chocolate. It literally, the meat melts on your tongue. It's so delicious. So Chris and I are just, I mean, I'll bet you that every guy ate, 5 to 10 pounds of meat himself. These guys start getting drunk and they're doing shochu shots, and they would give us shots, and we kept watching. Fujinami was sitting next to Chris and I, and we were watching him, and he would give us his, they were trying to make him drink, and we were substituting his drink with water. So he wasn't getting drunk, but everybody around him was just getting shit-faced. And brother, when I'm telling you they were getting shit-faced, that doesn't even begin to tell you how drunk these guys were getting. So all of a sudden, both Chris and I are like, waiter, check please. We take a powder and we leave, and we go down into our room, and it sounds like, a scene from Porky's, or, you name the craziest Animal House, the toga party at Animal House. And there is water flowing down the stairs, and we're locked in our room, and they're coming and beating on our door, but we're not unlocking the door. And finally we hear this voice on the other side of the door going, Chris, Pita, Fujinami-san. So we open the door, and it's Fujinami, and he comes in, and he hides and sleeps with us that night because they're trying to find him. They're hunting him down because they realize he didn't get drunk with them, and so they're pissed at him. They spent the whole night, and they literally caused like $50,000 worth of damage to this hotel. Flooded the hotel, destroyed, like, it was like, honestly, it was like Van Halen was, at the hotel. They literally destroyed this hotel. And I'll never forget the next morning, as everybody was getting on the bus, Chris and I were sitting at the back, and when everybody would get on the bus, we'd scream as loud as we could, "Ohayo gozaimasu!" And they would all just go, "Oh, God almighty, shut up, stop." They were all just sick as dogs, had the worst hangovers you'd ever seen. And that's my favorite Fujinami story. But one better than that is, just to finish this off, Fujinami is wrestling Barbarian on the tour. I wrestled Barbarian in the Sumo Palace.
I thought you meant Joe. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Yeah, Joe. Yes, no, please rib me about that. I told that story for that reason, because to this day I can't wait to see Joe again. I'm never not calling him Joe now.
It's awesome.
It's a matter of principle, right?
Yeah.
So he's wrestling Joe, and he does a freaking German suplex on Joe. And when he did, he hit so hard that his tooth stuck in Joe's back, his front tooth stuck in his back, and pulled out in the ring.
Oh my gosh.
So Peter Takahashi, who was the referee at the time, grabbed it, picked it up off the canvas, and then when the match was over, he threw the tooth away. And Fujinami comes into the training room, and I looked at Fujinami, and he smiled. He goes, "Yeah, I lost the tooth." And I go, "Dude, where's the tooth?" And he goes, "Oh, we threw it away." I go, "Fujinami-san, go get the tooth. Can you find a dentist tonight?" And he goes, "Yes." I go, "Find the tooth, wrap it in a toilet paper soaked in milk, and go to a dentist immediately. They can put it back in and save your tooth." And he goes, "You're kidding me. You're just ribbing me." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm telling you the absolute truth." And they went to the garbage can, fished out his tooth, put it in milk and a milk napkin, found a dentist, and put his tooth back in and saved his tooth.
That's amazing.
That's my best. That's the best Fujinami story I can give.
Yeah, that's the best one ever, actually. So, yeah.
You're listening to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Captain's Corner is bracing for a big close to 2025, featuring Glory Days GrappleCon 3 on Saturday, October 25th. Glory Days GrappleCon 3 invades the Hilton Garden Inn in beautiful Lutz, Florida, featuring the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, Abdul the Butcher, Barry Windham, Dory Funk Jr., and many more. This will be one of the biggest assemblance of legends to ever hit the Gulf Coast. Then, as the year closes, we focus on the Portland Wrestling Expo 2. Returning to the Holiday Inn Portland Airport on February 21st, PWE 2 will feature Ken Patera, The Grappler, Gorgeous Joey Jackson, Scott Norton, and over a dozen other stars of the past, present, and future of the Pacific Northwest. Make sure to head on over to Captain's Corner on Facebook and Instagram for full details on both those shows and all of our other signings. Cheers to the working man.
Okay, so in January of '88, now you show up in Memphis, right? For Jerry Jarrett. And obviously, February of '88, you and Gary Young win the CWA tag titles. I guess let's start with this. How did you get there? And then talk about tagging with Gary.
Well, as you know, by '88, Vince had bought all the territories.
Right.
So Vince had pretty much comprehensively shut down every territory. Like Red had me booked in Montreal, Canada, and Montreal shut down. And then he had me booked in Bill Watts' territory, and Bill Watts shut down. And then I talked to Stu Hart. A salty bastard wanted me to come up there and work for Stu. I thought about going up there, but he really wanted me to come up there. He goes, you're one of those big salty shooters, aren't you, Max? And I said, yeah, he really wanted me to come there. And I was about to go there. And then I somehow, I think Chris Benoit may have been the one who knew Lawler and had met Lawler, or I'm not sure. I don't remember the exact connection and how I ended up in Memphis, but Randy Hale gave me a call from Memphis, and I ended up in Memphis. And I had this, what a story just getting there. So I drove from Utah in a 1972 Ford pickup that used to be a city truck. It was completely worn out, had a rod knocking in it. To this day, I don't know how it. The reason it did is because I had 90-weight gear lube in the crankcase. And I drove it to Memphis. And Gary Young immediately, God bless him, took me under his wing. And partly because, I was big. He knew I was connected with Japan. He had hoped that, I could help him in that fashion as well. Gary was, any wrestler at that time wanted to go to Japan. Japan was the dream gig for anybody, know. So he saw the potential that I presented. And, he and I just really got along. And he needed a roommate and somebody to go down the road with. He was a heel. I was a heel. And he opened his heart and his rats up to me, and he took me on the road with him, and down that road I went with Gary Young, and man, we lit it up. We had a great time. Gary and I were like I said, we're fast friends. Lawler needed something new, so as soon as I showed up, he put the strap on me, both the CWA heavyweight strap and the tag team strap at the time. And for a while there, I was a dual champion.
Let me say something real quick, and I'll let you complete that. That is awesome, because this is what I love about Lawler and why he's on my Mount Rushmore. If you were to go to the WWF at this time, you would have been putting over Hogan, and Hogan would have gone over on you, and it would have been fine. Lawler brought guys in to put them over, and make guys. And I know he probably wanted a break of the title, but anyway, keep going with that.
No, you're so right. So you know what? In fairness, I'm glad you said that, because in fairness, I owe the king that. He took great care of me. Yeah. And when I debuted on television, he did something when he saw the dark character that I was. When he saw the Motley Crue character, he said, "Max, can I write 666 on your forehead?" And I said, "Oh, hell yes." So I had my black makeup on and my dark makeup and the long black coat. In fairness, I was the first dude to do that shit. I was the first wrestler to embrace the heavy metal dark side like that. And so he painted 666 on my forehead, and the houses immediately started coming up, just because, that's the Bible Belt. And those people, they hated me. In fact, Lawler invented, the Brother Love character from WWF days, was actually created by a character we had, and who was my manager, was Brother Ernest Angel.
Oh.
And he'd smash people over the head with the good book. And we won many a matches with shall we say, not such very unscrupulous tactics, shall we say, using the good book as part of our vernacular. Yeah. And he would, so we ended up, that's how we started. And Lawler was just, he's the king. And I've got some great stories about Jerry too. We
Hey, Max.
Yep.
Brother Ernest Angel was my manager too at one time.
Are you shitting me?
No, I'm not. In Nashville at the fairgrounds.
That's awesome.
And 2001, yes.
So, would you like to hear the greatest? In my opinion, this is my greatest Memphis story of all.
Please
go ahead.
So, if you know Ernest, he prefers the other gender.
Yeah.
So, and he and I got along. I'd been around the queer community my whole life. My auntie embraced the queer community from the time I was a kid. And so I'd been around the homosexual community for, my whole life. And so I was very comfortable, and I had no problems with him being of that persuasion. And so one night we were wrestling in a little town called Batesville, Mississippi. And Lawler was for some reason, I think I dropped the strap to Lawler, or no, he dropped it to me, I think, in Batesville that night. So we had Terry Adonis and Brother Ernest. Terry was also, preferred the gentleman persuasion, but him and Ernest never got together. They were two completely different kind of people. And even though they were the same persuasion, they weren't the same persuasion. Let's just put it that way. But Terry and I were great friends as well. I love Terry. Terry and I got along great. And so we were wrestling in Batesville, and Calhoun was reffing that night.
Oh, yeah.
And Lawler warned me. He said, Max, if I drop this strap to you, even in this little town, they're going to have to escort you out of town with the police. He said, so when shit gets heavy, get the hell out of the ring, have your car running, we'll send Ernest, get Ernest out of there as quick as possible. You get Ernest in your car and you go get him, we'll have the police escort you through the crowd and we'll get you the hell out of town. And he said, okay. And sure as shit, when he dropped the strap to me that night, it was ridiculous. I mean, the crowd started swinging chairs and we literally had to fight. Terry got hit in the head so hard with a chair. I think he ended up with stitches that night. Honestly, I think he had 15 or 20 stitches because he got hit in the head with a chair by a fan. And we literally fought all the way through the crowd with the cops around us. I mean, they were after us. And Ernest had rented a Cadillac, and we get in the car, and Ernest says to me, he goes, Max, he says, I got this young fella down here in Oxford, Mississippi. He goes, about Ole Miss? And I said, no, I don't, because I'm not from the South. I wasn't born and raised there. He goes, well, Oxford is where Ole Miss is. And he said, I got a young fella down there who really would like to see me tonight. And he said, they're having a fraternity sorority row and it's football or something big is going on tonight. He goes, would you like to go to Oxford with me tonight? He said, I'm almost sure you'll get laid if we go down there together. And I said, no shit. And he said, yes. And so I said, yeah, let's go. So we go to Oxford, and on the way to Oxford, he goes, now this boy is known to have some ecstasy. He said, would you consider, have you ever taken ecstasy, Max? And I said, no, but I've always wanted to. He goes, okay. So we get to Oxford. He introduces me to his boyfriend. And his boyfriend comes to me and goes, hey, Ernest said you might be interested in some ecstasy. You want one? I said, oh, hell yes. And we start partying. And all these girls watch Memphis Saturday morning television every week. They know who I am. So here I am in this sorority in Oxford, Mississippi at Ole Miss. And everybody is going, Maxx Payne in the house. And I'm about to get laid, brother. I've got a girl on my arm. Ernest vanishes, comes back and goes, okay, it's time to go. And I go, wait a minute. You just got to let me get laid too. He's like, no, Max, we got to get back because we got to do this tomorrow and this. And we had to do television the next day, actually. This was Friday night, so we had to get back because we had to do television Saturday morning. Then we'd drive back to Nashville that night, right? Mm-hmm. And I finally said, yeah, okay, because actually I had a girl waiting for me in Memphis, and I didn't want to do that to her. And I thought, okay, because the ecstasy was now kicking pretty heavy. So we get in the car and we drive from Oxford back to it is Oxford, right? Oxford.
Yeah, Oxford. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we're driving back, and we are laughing, tripping balls all the way back to Memphis. Now, Ernest will not stay at any place but a Holiday Inn. Mm. I don't know if he was this way with you. It was Quincy. You're the one that was it you, Quincy, or was it?
No, it was me.
Yeah.
It was Nashville. We all lived in Nashville, so we stayed at our own places in Nashville.
He's actually still in Nashville. I just talked to him a couple of years ago. Oh, and so we're driving to Nashville. He's talking about, I'm going to stay. He goes, listen, I'm going to stay at the Holiday Inn. You can take the car and go stay with your girl. He'd actually met my girl. Her name was Fran. He goes, you can go stay with Fran tonight. And I'll stay at the hotel. You come pick me up and we'll go TV together in the morning, Max. Are you okay with that? I said, oh, hell yeah. So we are laughing, tripping balls all the way back to Memphis. We pull up in front of the Holiday Inn. And I take Ernest's bags into the hotel. We come back out, and there's a security guard standing there with this young woman, and she's crying. And I'm like, and he's going, it's okay. It'll be all right. He's calming her down. And I walk up to him, and I go, hey, can I be of help of some kind? And this girl looks at me. She goes, yes, you can help me. She goes, I just got off of work. And I just got mugged, and the guy's in those bushes right down there, and this guy won't even go help me. And I looked at him, and I go, why won't you help her? And he goes, well, I don't want to get hurt or nothing. And I looked at her and I said, did he hold a gun on you or a knife? And she goes, no. I said, I'll go get your money back. Don't know what the hell I was thinking, but I think the ecstasy was thinking. So I walked down to the bushes and I yelled into these bushes. I could see his feet in there. I said, hey, come out and give me that money back to get back to the young lady, you son of a bitch. And he comes running out, knocks me down, running past me, and starts running down. And we're right off Beale Street, right in downtown Memphis. There's a Holiday Inn right in downtown Memphis. So we are literally, like 2 blocks off of the main in downtown Memphis. But it's still a high-end residential district. And I'm in the best shape of my life, right? And I'm thinking, you dumb son of a bitch, I'm going to chase you down and I'm going to beat your ass. So I start chasing this guy through the streets of Memphis. Now the cops show up and they're looking for him, spotlighting, and they can't find him. And I'm running through houses, behind houses. And Ernest is right behind me because he wants me to catch the son of a bitch too, because he's pissed as hell that this guy robbed this young lady. So we're running behind his house. And I said, you son of a bitch, come out right now. I'm going to catch you. I promise you, I ain't giving up till I catch you. And all of a sudden, he jumps out of the bushes and he starts running. He runs down the street through this parking lot. And I'm just about to the point where I'm just reaching out to grab the collar of his shirt and my shoe comes untied. Oh my God, I'm so pissed. So I said, keep your eyes on him, Ernest. I got to tie my shoe. And Ernest goes, no, Max, no. I said, I got to. So I tie my shoe and I go, did you see him, Ernest? Did you watch him? He goes, yeah, he turned down this alley up here. Yeah, let's go. Oh, he's gone, Max. He's gone. And I'm like, oh, shit. So now we've gone completely around the block and we're walking down this dark alley and I'm looking at the hotel is right straight in front of me. And this alley is completely dark, right? And I'm so sad. I'm going, what am I going to tell this girl? I didn't catch the dude. I didn't get the money. And all of a sudden, this little sliver of light catches my eye. And I'm like, hold on a second, Ernest. He goes, what, Max, what? I go, that son of a buck is right there. He goes, no, you're kidding, Max. And I back up and I go, I'm telling you, Ernest, that man is right here. And now my eyes are adjusting. And it's one of those stairwells that goes down into the dark. And then there's a door at the bottom. Well, this stupid son of a bitch had tried to get in this door, but the door had a padlock on it. And instead of pulling the door back shut, he'd left it ajar, and the light on the other side was the only light at the bottom of that blackness and caught my eye. So I yelled down in there. I said, come on up and take the ass whooping I'm about to bestow on you, because if I have to come down there, it's going to be even worse. And all of a sudden, it sounds like an Indian war. He comes coming out of that hole screaming at the top of his lungs. And it is so amazing. And I know this is, you can, if you ever see Ernest again, you ever talk to him, ask him, he'll tell you this, every word of this is the truth. As he came up, this guy took a swing at me and he hit me in the face. But when he hit me, I caught his fist and I put him in a painkiller. And he led straight to the ground with his forehead into the gravel. And he literally he led without putting his hands down into the gravel with his forehead. And I caught painkiller and I put that submission hold on his arm. And now he is screaming at the top of his lungs. And I'm so pissed. I'm going to make him apologize to everybody for being a penis, including the Pope. You apologize to her. So now the security guard goes and gets her, brings her back. Now, because I'm whooping, this guy is screaming bloody murder. She starts to feel bad for him. And right then, I feel a billy club tap me on the shoulder. And I hear a cop voice, and he goes, Max. And I'm like, how does this guy know my name? And obviously, everybody around me's calling me Max, right?
Yeah.
But it's a cop. It's a Memphis cop. And he's tapped me on the shoulder. He goes, Max, we got this. Let him go. We'll take care of it. And I said, no. He goes, Max, just let the guy go. We got this. And I said, all right. So I get off of him, and I'm like, I'm like a freaking gorilla, because I'm just, fight or flight.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm fired up. He goes, come left. He goes, I'm going to set you in the back of my car. He goes, come and sit in my car. Calm down. Get cool off in the car, because it was hot. It was Memphis summer, and it was hot. I don't think it was October. I think it was right at the beginning of the school year. So it was probably like, I'm going to guess, the end of August, early September. But it is hot. And so he sets me in his car, and I'm cooling down. And then my tank top, I have a tank top on, and it's torn, and half of it's, laying down. So I only got one strap. I feel like Lawler. I only got one strap on my tank top. The cop comes over, and he gets in the car, and he goes, you calm down, Max? And I said, yeah, I'm calm down. He goes, Max, he goes, you're faced with a dilemma. And I said, what's that? He goes, just so you know, she had $1,200 in her purse, and she got it all back.
Yeah.
I said, are you shitting me? He goes, no, you got all of her money back. And I go, oh my God, that's all I cared about. I'm so happy. He goes, yeah, that's not your dilemma. I said, well, what's my dilemma? He says, well, you just caught a mugger in the streets of Memphis, Tennessee. He said, everybody that's standing out there, all of my compadres in the police force, they want to call the Memphis paper right now on the phone and tell the world about this amazing story. And I said, wow, that's pretty cool. He goes, there's only one problem with that. He goes, we do that, you won't be a heel tomorrow on Memphis television. I'm like, how does he know all of this? Well, he's friends with Lawler.
Mm.
He's like Lawler's security guard at freaking Mid-South Coliseum. He goes, I already talked to Jerry, and Jerry doesn't want us to turn you in to the paper, because if we do, you'll be a baby face, and they don't want you to turn right now. They want you, they just put the strap on you, and they want Lawler to chase you and be a heel. He goes, they're just not ready to do that. He said, I said, yeah, that's probably a better thing. And he said, yeah, it probably is. And I said, well, okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. So I got out of the car, went to my girl's house that night, and I'm sitting at my girl's house, and I thought about this poor son of a bitch sitting in a jail cell, picking the gravel out of his forehead. and I just have to believe to this day that if there was ever a stirring revelation for him that maybe he'd chosen the wrong profession, that maybe he saw the light at that exact moment, that just maybe a life of crime wasn't for him, that the only time that he would pick to rob somebody and mug a girl in the streets of Memphis, it would be the CWA wrestling champion of the world that he happened to be, that happened to track him down, chase him through the streets of Memphis, and beat his dumb ass near to death.
Mm.
What a horrible moment for him to wake up that next morning, because I'm telling you, I know he felt like he just got his ass handed to him by a freight train, because I was not easy on him. I guarantee you, I think I felt his shoulder dislocate as well. And so I can't believe that to this day, he still doesn't have some of the scars of that meeting. So there you go. The time that Maxx Payne chased and caught a mugger.
That's awesome.
So that wasn't the time that you turned babyface. So tell us about when they turned you babyface.
God, I got to be honest with you. They did turn me babyface in Memphis, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't remember. To be honest with you, man, that was so long ago. I don't remember. It's so funny, though. Every time people tried to make me be a heel, every time, the crowd always saw through it, always. And they always wanted to take me as a babyface. So I do not remember turning babyface in Memphis. I'm sure I did, but that should have been the moment they used to turn me. They should have turned me right then, because it would have been one of those moments in the history of Memphis that, would have, Lawler doesn't even remember the story, but I know Ernest does. And I'm sure the guy that I caught does. And I'm sure the girl that I got her money back for
Yeah.
as well.
That could have been an epic thing if they had used it right. I was sitting there thinking
that happened to me on numerous occasions in my wrestling history, and that there were great moments where they should have turned me babyface and didn't, and that would have been one of the classic examples. They should have turned me right then.
Yeah, definitely. And so November of '88, you worked a few WWF TV matches and a few more in January. How did you get those bookings?
So I had a friend named Bill Anderson that I knew through Red Bastien out of Los Angeles. And Bill, he booked all of the job talent for the WWF on the West Coast. And I actually, what's funny about this? I found Bill through the guy that I started my territory with in Utah, a guy named Chip Atkinson. When he wrestled under the name Dash Riprock. And I found Bill through Dash. Dash tracked me down because he was from Lehi, Utah. He just bought a ring he actually bought 2 rings from Billy Jack Haynes. Billy Jack Haynes had ran a territory in Oregon and had bought these 2 incredible rings. And they were badass wrestling rings. Really the nicest wrestling rings I ever performed in. They were brilliant. And he bought these rings because he wanted to learn how to wrestle himself. He worked at a steel mill in Utah County, and the guys that worked at the steel mills made shitloads of money. And he worked at this steel mill and bought these rings. I think he bought both of them for $1,500 from Billy Jack Haynes. And he set one up in his backyard, and it was right off the I-15 freeway. You could literally see the ring off the freeway, and he put a sign up, he printed a sign, said, "You want to train for wrestling? Contact us," had his number printed on the sign. And he hired me because, I was the only professional wrestler from Utah at the time, other than this guy named Steve Gatorwolf. So, I probably had and because I'd been to Memphis in Japan, he had met Billy Anderson somehow, and he was traveling all over the Western United States doing jobs for the WWF. And I was not afraid to do jobs. I figured what better way to get seen, right?
Yeah.
I started going to these towns, Sacramento, San Francisco, Fresno, I believe, Reno, I think it was one of them. So I wrestled all over the West. I think we did some in Phoenix and Tucson, I think. I ended up doing probably 10 different shots for, doing jobs for the WWF.
That's awesome.
We'll be right back with more Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Hey, my name is Tammy Reynolds. I am the wife of Forsaken Rick Reynolds, that super cool guy that everybody knows and loves. And I represent West Side Sauces. I make sauces, I bottle them, I seal them, I sell them. I have a hot honey sauce, I have a sweet sauce, I have a hot sauce, I have a white sauce that's so yummy you can use it on everything. They are absolutely amazing, and I'm so proud of them. We make them from scratch. So go on our website, westsidesauces.com, check out our products, read about our story, and go online and order you some of these yummy sauces. And Rick actually uses all of the sauces because he is a die-hard smoker and griller, and so he likes really good sauces and rubs, and I make them, so how convenient is that for him? Go on our website, westsidesauces.com, order you some samples, and I think you'll thoroughly enjoy them. Thank you guys. Be blessed.
So this next question is probably one of the main questions we want to ask on this show. And I can think of nobody better to ask it than the co-host with the mo-host, Quinton Quarisma. Take that one, Quinton.
All right. So in the spring of '89, you show back up in Nashville, Tennessee. You're working for Dr. Squash and the IWA. How did you end up working? How did you end up back there?
So, the as you know, the fairgrounds was the shittiest place on planet Earth to wrestle. I swear to God, I thought their armories were bad. Well, they paled by comparison. The fairgrounds in Nashville, and everybody hated that night. Whenever we had to wrestle at the fairgrounds, everybody hated it.
Okay.
The dressing rooms are too small.
The only thing good that ever came from that is I met this guy named Michael Clare, and he went by his ring name was, everybody called him Dr. Squash, and the reason they called him Dr. Squash was because he was so shitty at the business and wrestling that he would just, he would try to do a move like he was trying to do a sunset flip and near broke Gypsy Rose's back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. He didn't have 2 left feet. He had 3 left feet.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he was the most untalented athlete. He had no athletic prowess at all, but he was one of those guys who could sell refrigerators to Eskimos.
Yeah.
He'd gotten that job working as security. He'd gotten a job working as a security job, a guard, working for Peaches. Peaches was this the guy who ran security at the fairgrounds. Peaches and I ended up being really good friends.
Nice guy.
Is he still around? Is he still alive?
I've heard he passed away a while back, but he was a super nice guy.
Oh, I love Peaches. I have lots of stories about Peaches, I'll tell you that. But big man, holy shit.
Yep.
But he was probably 3 inches taller than me and 100 pounds heavier than I was.
Wow.
He was a big fella. And so was Mike. Mike Clare he's not a small guy. He's probably an inch shorter than me, still weighs 325 pounds. But Mike was a musician.
Yeah.
It was in Nashville because he was there trying to break into the country music industry. And he was good friends with Chet Atkins.
Steve Miller, I know that too.
Well, yeah, the Steve Miller thing came because of me.
Okay, fair enough. Right.
But because of what I brought to the table. Sorry, I'm not trying to. I didn't mean that to sound as egotistical as it did.
No, I get
Steve
it.
Miller
I totally
happened because of Living Insanity.
Okay.
And the music that he gave to Steve Miller was the music that I'd written.
Okay.
I'll tell you how we got to that's where the IWA comes into the future of my life. So Mike calls me and he says, listen, I found this lady that's going to bankroll this wrestling territory. We've got television and we've already got some of the shows written up and drawn. And do you want to come? At the time I believe it or not, I'd already been through drugs so heavy. This is the guy who a year earlier had been to Japan and was drug free, and now has already been to the United States within a year. Honestly, I don't know how I survived. I don't, because I had a connection to drugs that was a dream come true would be a dream come true for anybody, any wrestler, any drug addict. I had direct access to any prescription, as much prescription drugs as you could ever want. And so by the time I quit doing benzodiazepines, I could do 200 milligrams of Valium and 4 halcyons, number 10 halcyons, and not feel the effects.
Whoa.
Yeah, I do not know how I didn't die. Not to mention I was taking Dilaudid and Percocets and Percocets.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how. Honestly, the good Lord, I'll never forget looking in the mirror one day. I just snorted 6 number 10 or number 5 Dilaudid, whatever the highest. I think it's number 5 Dilaudid.
Yeah.
We'd come up and snort them. And I just snorted some. We were snorted them off of the counter, off of a marble countertop in a bathroom. And I looked in the mirror, and that was the moment I looked at myself and I said, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
You're gonna die.
Yeah.
And this was before I got started. I had 4 kids, you know. I had a wife and 4 kids. I had a brand new baby girl. It was 2 years old, and I decided I was going to quit. So when Mike called me to ask me to come do the IWA, I said, "I'll come. Let's do it in the anti-drug thing." And he said, "That's great. Come on, we'll do that." And then the whole point of the IWA, oh my God, the whole intention of the IWA, I'm sorry, but we were cutting edge and nobody's ever done this. And by God, somebody eventually is really going to do this. But the entire intention of the IWA was to make fun of the wrestling business. That's all there was to it. I've heard Mike talk about it still to this day, and he likes to act like there was some seriousness to it.
Yeah.
No, but even he does. He talks about, man, we had this team. He was the leader of the Dr. Squash thing. And in fact, the Isaac Yankem idea,
right,
to this day came from Dr. Squash because he was a dentist.
Yeah.
And he had 2 nurses, IV scalpel, or 2 assistants, IV and scalpel, that were masters.
Interns.
Bubba Perry.
Interns, IV and scalpel.
Yep.
God, to this day, I do not know how Vince didn't take that gimmick, because both Bubba and Mike Ayers, Bubba Perry and Mike Ayers, they're still good friends. I just talked to them.
Yeah.
I talked to Bubba a couple weeks ago at the reunion.
I love Bubba. I love Mike, and that's Mike Ayers. And that intern IV and scalpel was, to me, one of the greatest gimmicks. And then Nurse Goodbody, and then Dr. Squaw, and the whole thing was just the shit. It was just, to me, it was great. And I couldn't wait to be a part of it. And I did it because at the time I was told that there was money there.
Yeah.
And that, the money was going to be procured by the people who were backing it. It was already in place, whether we succeeded at the box office or not. And I think that was the biggest mistake that the IWA made. The IWA should have never tried to do live shows.
Yeah.
We should have just done like 1 live show a month to record television to make fun of shit, right? That's why I joined the IWA. I really thought that we were just, because they had this clown, and they had Luscious Leslie Love, the queer character, and the whole thing was just meant to be over the top, the other way, and to make fun of everything. And for that part of the IWA, I'm incredibly proud. That part was amazing, because we did some funny shit, and I really wish that it would have succeeded in spite of itself. But I think the fact that we're still talking about it almost 30 years later, that's the kind of legend status it has, so ridiculously shitty and so funny. It was meant to be so funny that I think we kind of accomplished that. And so the fact that it still has sort of that legendary feel to it, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. I totally agree. January of 93, you show up in WCW as Maxx Payne. Yeah. How did you get there? And then how was I guess, like, obviously there was the Van Hammer, who was the fake of you, basically.
Right.
Talk about that.
So, this is where Rip Rogers comes into my life.
Okay.
So let me just start when I was in Germany.
Yeah.
I literally had to beg them. I went to the promoter and I asked him to advance me enough money to buy a guitar and to buy this guitar processor and a wireless guitar system, so that I could plug in and play over the PA system wherever I was at. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said, let's try this gimmick of me being the first guitar playing wrestler. And Otto Vons hated it. But at the time I asked, I knew who to ask. And I asked this guy named Peter Williams, and he was the promoter in the city of Hanover. The way Germany was divided into sort of sections, and the first section was Graz, Austria, which was Otto Vons. We started actually in Berlin, Germany, which was a Peter Williams gig. So I met Peter the first time in Berlin. Then we went to Graz, Austria, and we were in Graz for, I think, 3 weeks. And then from Graz, we went to Vienna, Austria, where we were at for, I think, 6 weeks, 7 weeks in Vienna. And then we'd leave Vienna and we'd go to Hanover, Germany, where we'd be for 2 months. And then we'd end up we did a little stint in Dortmund, Germany, and then Bremen, Germany. And Bremen was Otto's, Dortmund was Otto's, and but Hanover was Peter Williams. And so when I went back after my first year in Germany, that's when I taught myself. I bought this little guitar called a Hohner G3T, and it's a copy of a Steinberger.
Uh-huh.
And it's a headless guitar that I could carry all over the world with me. And then I had this little processor I'd bought called a Zoom 9000.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, a Zoom 9000. They made a 9001 for the bass.
Right, exactly.
Right. So you know who Zoom is.
Oh, yeah.
And so I had this Zoom 9000, and it was an amazing little box. It was actually, they had taken the idea of the Rockman from Tom Schultz, and they had literally expounded on it and really made it what it could be. The Rockman, that Tom Schultz, the guitar player from Boston, was the first guy who invented the headphone amplifier for a guitar.
Okay.
So you plug in your guitar to this little Rockman, it was called, and put headphones on, and you could practice, and it wouldn't bother anybody. And he'd put distortion in it and compression, but it was very limited, right?
Yeah.
Well, Zoom came out with this 9000, and Zoom had a multitude of effects in it, from clean to ultra distortion. And so after the Black Album of Metallica came out, I went home that summer, and that January after my first season in Germany, and I bought the little guitar, the G3T. I was the Hohner G3T I told you about, and I taught myself how to play the Black Album by Metallica.
Yeah.
And I met this guy named Jay Lansford in Hanover, Germany that year. And Jay worked for a record company called SPV.
Oh, yeah.
And SPV was the European distributor for Roadrunner, which was the heavy metal,
right?
The heavy metal record label in Europe.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he was this huge wrestling fan, and I met him, and he and I became best friends. We started jamming together after I would get done with my gigs in Hanover. We'd go to this place called the Glocksy in Hanover, which used to be an armament manufacturing place in World War II. And the walls were 5 feet thick of concrete. And so they had all these little rooms in it. They'd converted it into jam rooms for bands. I mean, what a perfect place for bands to go jam, because once you shut the door that weighed 8 tons, no one outside could hear you, right? So you could be as loud as you want in this room. Jay and I became really good friends, and he had a friend named Sasha who agreed to record me a backing track to a song I'd written called WFO, which stood for Wide Open.
Okay.
So I learned how to play this song, and I went to Peter Williams and I said, okay, I've got the backing track. If you'll lend me the money to buy this particular guitar I wanted, which, of course, at the time, since I was a Metallica fan, I couldn't have anything but ESP M2 Custom, right?
Yeah.
So I bought a purple ESP M2 Custom, And then I bought a cheapy little wireless system that I bought in Germany so it would work on German power.
Uh-huh.
And I used my Zoom 9000, and I started practicing during the day in the tent in Hanover. And then with my friends at night after the show at the Glocksy with my friend Jay and Martin, who was his friend that he worked with at the record label SPV, and we'd jam and I'd practice and rehearse. And then one night, I talked Peter into saying, "Why don't we try this?" And I don't know how else to say it, but the rest is history. After I played the very first night, the houses started going up. People started showing up. And within a couple of weeks of me playing like every other night or so, Hanover was horrible. The houses were horrible. And what I love about Germany, man, that's the thing that's so amazing about Europe, is you live on site with, it's called the Schützenplatz, and they build a tent there, and the tent's there for 63 days, and you wrestle in the same building every night, and it's ran like a tournament. And so, the people that are there, they go out in the community, and really all it is, that's what I love about the Germans. You just give them one good reason to drink beer. They don't even need a reason to drink beer, for God's sakes, and they'll show up. Just if there's beer there, it's enough. And so add to it that there's wrestling, but Hanover, they'd almost killed it. It just, the ring was the shits, the actual ring itself. So it made it difficult to work in.
Yeah.
But when I started playing the guitar, the houses changed immediately. And I mean, we started doing really, really good business. And so, as you can imagine, Peter Williams loved me because he started making money. Well, all the boys loved me too because they all sold pictures and autographs and shirts. And, now there's people there to buy their shit. Not to mention to buy them alcohol every night and feed them and, take care of them. They're wrestling fans were fantastic. They buy you beer, they buy you food, they buy your clothing, they pay for autographs, so the more people there, the better for all of us. And so that's when it started. And by the end of that tour, I played in Bremen, Germany on, I believe it was December. I said it was the 15th, but it was more like the 18th, which coincided with this dream I was having about Kiss, which God rest his soul, Ace Frehley just died, and I loved Kiss.
Oh,
but I had this reoccurring dream that Ace Frehley would hand me his guitar on stage, and I couldn't play it. And I finally played my guitar in front of 18,000 people in Bremen, Germany, on the last night of that tour. And I never had the dream again. The dream went away, and because I played my guitar in front of a live crowd, so it must have satisfied my unconscious. I never had the dream again.
Oh man, that's cool.
Rip Rogers called Cowboy Bill Watts on the phone, and Bill Watts wanted to meet me because I was a shooter.
Right. Okay.
And that's all he gave a shit about. He didn't give a shit about the guitar. But then heard I did, and so they were just appeasing me when I showed up the first time to play the national anthem. They thought I was going to suck at it and get booed out of the hall, but that's not what happened, as we all know.
Right.
And, Van Hammer, he wasn't even good at carrying his guitar around. He dropped that flying V off of his motorcycle a couple of times.
Oh man!
Incidentally, I have the flying V that Van Hammer had. I took it from him, fixed it, and gave it to my oldest son. And my oldest son still has that flying V and plays it to this day.
Dude, that is amazing. That's some nice trivia. Yeah.
So around that time in November, you teamed up with Cactus Jack. Whose idea was to put all that together?
Well, unfortunately, I was so irrelevant in WCW. I'm going to guess it was Mick's idea. Okay. Mick and I had talked a few times, and I loved Mick. Mick and I had become friends enough. I wish I could give you the definitive answer of how that worked out.
Yeah.
But Mick and I got along really, really, really well. And so when I was approached with tag teaming with him, I couldn't have been happier.
Yeah.
So whoever it was that had the idea, it might have been the Nasty Boys that had the idea.
Okay. Y'all had some great feuds.
Yeah, y'all had some crazy matches with the Nasty Boys.
We did, and I've said this time and time again. No matter what Knobs and Sags say about me, I love them.
Oh, okay.
I had nothing but amazing times with them. We did the road together, and I have some really amazing stories with Knobs and Sags. So I love them both, and I'm sorry Brian ever got hurt, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. That wasn't my fault. That was Brian's fault because he didn't trust me.
Okay.
All right, so December of '94, you show up in the WWF. How did you get signed, and who came up with a Man Mountain Rock gimmick?
Oh, this is the hardest part of my career because Mick. I'm going to quote Mick Foley. This is the one thing I do love about Mick, even to this day, is he still talks about me in his own way, and his exact quote was, "They defrocked me."
Oh, yeah.
The only time in my wrestling career I should have said no was to the Man Mountain Rock character. And I say that with trepidation because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings that like the Man Mountain Rock character.
Okay.
But they took so much away from me. They took everything from me.
Yeah.
Jim Johnston wrote my backing track.
Oh.
They wouldn't. I mean, every time you heard me play the guitar on TV, other than when I was going to the ring, it was Jim Johnston's guitar and Jim Johnston's guitar tone. And he used this doubler that I hated what Jim Johnston did to me.
Gotcha.
And, so it was crushing. It was, I think it might have been Jay Strongbow, but somebody came up. It might have been J.J. Dillon, but they wanted, and then on top of that, the Clique hated me so bad. They really, really, really wanted to destroy me, and I can't answer why that is. You'd have to ask them those kinds of questions, why they hated me so bad, but they did. And it was just one of those things that, I'm not a tie-dye guy. And I love tie. Don't get me wrong. I love tie-dye.
Sure.
I have tie-dye shirts that I would wear, but that's not who I wanted my character to be. My character was Maxx Payne.
Right, definitely. Yeah.
And I wanted something like that. In fact, I even tried to be the blacksmith because I figured if I got to be the blacksmith, at least I could wear black leather and dark clothing and, hit an anvil and steel and, use that mentality to incorporate into the heavy metal guitar guy.
Right.
And they completely stripped me of the heavy metal guy. And their claim was always that it was too closely associated to Undertaker. And I asked Vince on numerous occasions, how does this resemble the Undertaker?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not the Undertaker. I'm a guitar player. I think like, heavy metal bands, Taker's Taker. He's the dead man.
Yeah. Right.
Does he associate with this? Does it fit into that mentality? Well, yes, but there's plenty of room in the heavy metal world for another guy who wears black that isn't a dead man. I'm not a dead man.
Yeah.
And
right.
Taker was Taker. Nobody could dethrone Taker.
Yeah.
He is what he is. My God, he's the biggest icon. I'm sorry. To me, he's bigger than Hogan. And so there wasn't competition. In fact, I always dreamed Taker that I could compliment Taker, if anything, eventually, write a bitchin' ass guitar theme to, escort him to the ring. Or,
dude,
we end up being foes and
eventually
tagging up together. So I always envisioned that kind of a mentality. And quite frankly, by this time, I got to, I've said this before. I was really, man, I was getting worn out. I hadn't had that big run, but by the same token, I believed that I had a talent to bring to the WWF in my television career. I had a degree in television and film. I always believed I could work very well behind the scenes, but I realized very early on in my WWF career that wasn't going to happen. And then the whole Steve Miller thing happened, and that changed. It changed my career forever.
All right, we're going to stop things right there with Maxx Payne, guys. Stay tuned after the break for all the info on the rest of this interview in next week's episode. We'll be right back to wrap things up with Sheik and Quinton after these messages.
Listen up, you bunch of slack-jawed flea market freeloaders. If you think you know Memphis wrestling, you don't know nothing till you've heard the Retro Wrestling Review podcast, brother. Every week they're talking the real stuff. Lawler, Jarrett, PG-13, yeah, and even my Moondogs. Watch long stories from the road, interviews with folks who were in the thick of it, brother. The blood, the beer, and the bail money. It's all on the Wrestlecopia Podcast Network. Go to uswapodcast.com or I'll come down there and I'll slap a taste out of your mouth.
Trouble, and you can hear it in their scream. So stay out of the swamp, cause the full moon is shining big and bright, and you might run into a moondog and meet your big fight.
Oh, Sheik and Quinton, man, oh man, that was an incredible interview with Maxx Payne. And so, guys, I just kind of want to touch on this before I get your all's take on the interview so far. So here's the deal. Part of the reason that we interviewed Max today is not only because we wanted to talk about his career, the IWA, all the cool stuff like that. But one of the topics that I've been so enthralled with since I heard about it from Road Dogg on the Live and in Color with Wolfie D podcast is his band with Dr. Squash, Brad Armstrong, Nick Patrick, and Road Dogg called LivingInSanity. Okay. Obviously, I'm a huge music fan and wrestling fan, and this is the world's first and only maybe totally real wrestling rock band. So what we're going to do is we're going to dedicate the next episode to LivingInSanity. We're going to tell the full story as Max told it. You might even hear some clips from other folks talking about it as well. But either way, we're doing an entire show. It's going to be called LivingInSanity, the story of the wrestling rock band. Anyway, what do y'all think about that?
Yeah, man. I mean, Max gave us so much. It deserves to be talked about, and it's a very cool thing. I can't wait to hear more about it.
I thought it was really interesting. I remember when you had Road Dogg on, and we had Dr. Squash on. I wasn't here when you had Dr. Squash on, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Y'all talked about it, and it's very interesting. But, Max goes into detail, and I liked how there was you always put a rock band together, It was more to it. He went into detail, and it was very interesting.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. I'm just excited to be able to feature it and make it a part of the show. I was like, man, we could make a clip of this, and then the clip turned into like almost an hour, and I'm like, holy cow. So what we're going to do, and this was partly Q's idea, and I got to give you credit to that, Q, but let's make this two-parters. So this episode was the full interview talking about his career, and there were a lot of things we didn't get to talk about that we wanted to. And then the next episode will be LivingInSanity, the story of the wrestling rock band. And so y'all tune in for that. We can't wait. And thank you all so much for listening so far. I mean, guys, what Max told us so far is incredible. I'm just blown away by that.
Oh, definitely, man. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, one more time, guys. Captain's Corner, Portland Wrestling Expo 2, Saturday, February 21st, Holiday Inn, Portland Airport, 8439 Northeast Columbia Court, Portland, Oregon. Thank you all so much for listening. If you want to find out all the other details about upcoming shows and such like that, it's at GMBMPW on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X. Thank you all so much for liking, sharing, supporting, and everything, but most importantly, thank you for listening. Guys, that's all I got for today. So excited about Living Insanity next week. What y'all got? Anything before we go?
No, man, that's all I got. I'm looking forward to it too.
What about you, Q?
Go buy a shirt.
That's right. And
go.
guys, by the way, there are some new shirts coming on a new site all in time. We'll tell you about it as soon as we can, but just keep an eye on at GMBMPW and you'll find it. Thanks again. We'll see y'all next week for Living Insanity on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Don't forget.
Fraud is a serious crime, Mr. Man. And I don't like it when a punk rock and roller tries to pass himself off as a wrestler.
But I am a superstar in the World Wrestling Federation.
So now you're a wrestler trying to impersonate a rock and roller?
No, I'm a rock and roller too. Wait, look, here's my CD.
Let me see this. So what is it? Are you a wrestler trying to impersonate a rock and roller, or a rock and roller trying to impersonate a wrestler?
You still don't get it, do you, Mr. Turturro?
No, I don't understand. Now, can you prove it to me, Mr. Mountain, that you're a rock and roller?
Sure, I'd love to, man.
Wow. Okay. So now, can you prove you're a WWF superstar?
Sure.
You can go now, Mr. Rock.
With a tear in my eye, this is the greatest moment in my life. This has been a James Rock Street production.